One man brought his father's lifelong collection to a Lego store. The collection was worth over $200,000. He never got paid. That's the whole story in 3 sentences. But what happened next took 9 months, 2 states, a dozen police officers, a dislocated shoulder, a fake apology video, a CEO who claimed he'd never heard of the man, and a court-ordered gag order designed to bury all of it. Because when a hobby becomes an industry, innocence is usually the first thing to disappear. This isn't a story about the Lego group. It's about the secondary market, the aftermarket for plastic bricks that has exploded over the last 20 years. What used to be a fun pastime is now a multi-million-dollar business. Rare sets, specifically vintage Star Wars sets, fetch thousands of dollars at auction. And in this booming aftermarket, one company stood out above the rest: bricks and minifigs. They were the gold standard. If you had a collection to sell, you went with them. A massive franchise, operating stores all across North America. Collectors trusted them, families trusted them. And this is a story of what happened when that trust ran headfirst into corporate greed, a hostile takeover, and a local police department that seemed all too eager to protect the corporation while punishing the people it had already stolen from. But to understand how all of this fell apart, we have to start at the very beginning. Collecting vintage toys is a serious investment. For one man, building his Lego Star Wars collection was a lifelong passion project. Over the years, he gathered some of the rarest items ever produced by the company: mint condition boxes, exclusive minifigures, limited run sets. His collection was widely considered to be one of the best in the world. People referred to it as a Library of Alexandria for Lego. But as the years went on, the collector's health began to decline. Medical issues piled up, and the family found themselves in need of financial support. The collector's son, Brian Mansell, realized they had a very valuable asset sitting right in front of them. The Lego collection was estimated to be worth up to $200,000. Selling it could change their lives and provide the medical care his father desperately needed. Brian wanted to do things the right way. He didn't want to deal with the hassle of eBay, the shipping, the potential scammers, the seller fees. He wanted a safe, reputable buyer, so he turned to Bricks and Minifigs. Bricks and Minifigs operates on a franchise model. While there's a corporate headquarters overseeing the brand, individual stores are owned and operated by local franchisees. Brian went to the Salem, Oregon location, and at the time, the store was owned by a couple named the Gormans. Crystal Gorman was the one handling the business. Brian and Crystal worked out a deal. Because the collection was so large and so valuable, the store couldn't just buy it outright in cash. Instead, they agreed on a consignment deal. Consignment is a very common practice in the world of high-end collectibles. In a consignment agreement, the seller, Brian, hands over the inventory to the store. The store puts the items on their shelves and handles the actual selling to customers. When an item sells, the store keeps a small percentage as a commission, and the rest goes back to the original owner. The most important part of a consignment deal is ownership. The contract explicitly states that the items still belong to Brian and his father until the moment they are sold. The store is simply acting as a middleman. Brian agreed to the terms. He brought the entire collection to the Salem store.
This was a store's worth of inventory. So that store that day was nothing but my dad's collection. Like, all the shelves filled. They had to bring in extra shelves and filled the whole party room with shelves.
For a brief moment, it seemed like a win-win. The store had incredible inventory to draw in customers, and Brian's family was going to get the money they needed. But then the Gormans' personal circumstances changed. Crystal's husband had a work-related issue that required them to move out of the country. They couldn't run the Salem stores from overseas. Crystal contacted Bricks and Minifigs Corporate to let them know they needed to sell the franchise location. Corporate responded by telling her they already had buyers interested in the area. What should have been a standard business transition was about to become something much worse. According to the Gormans, Bricks and Minifigs Corporate came down hard. They informed Crystal that they were terminating her franchise agreement early. They wanted her out of the building immediately. Crystal was uncomfortable with this, but corporate wasn't interested. They sent representatives to the store to physically force her out. But Crystal was smart. She saved the security camera footage from that night.
The security cam footage, it's him at the store kicking her out. In that footage they sent us is Crystal asking him, how am I supposed to pay this guy? These are sets he has not been paid for.
These are ones that he has not been paid his percentage yet. And if I don't have the tickets, I won't know how much I need to pay him.
The corporate representative looks at her and says,
that's a business thing and not necessarily yours. He's taking on the business, he takes on all that consignment.
The new owners, Brandon Best and Joshua Johnson, stepped in. Crystal immediately called Brian to tell him what happened. She explained that corporate had taken over the location and she was no longer in charge of his collection. Brian contacted the new owners to ask about the status of his deal. He wanted to know when he would be receiving his payouts for the sets that were actively selling. The response he got was shocking. The new owners, backed by corporate, told Brian they don't do consignment. They claimed consignment deals were against company policy, and because they never signed the original contract, they argued it was void. Instead, they kept the entire $200,000 collection on their shelves. They actively posted pictures of the rare vintage Star Wars sets on the store's social media pages. They were marketing the collection, and they were selling it. When Brian asked for his money, they said no. When Brian asked to just come pick up the unsold sets and take them home, they said no. Brian was stuck. The store had taken his father's collection, they hadn't paid a dime, and they were refusing to return his property.
All you have to do is let me in back. We can go that route or we can go to court. And the guy just looks at me, crosses his arms and goes, let me tell you what's gonna happen. If we go to court, we're gonna drag this thing out so long and you're gonna end up spending so much more money than your collection is ever worth or what you ever would have gotten on it, that it ain't worth it, man.
They boasted that would bleed Brian dry in legal fees. They knew Brian didn't have a massive legal fund. They knew his father was sick. They were using their corporate wealth as a weapon to force Brian to walk away empty-handed. Brian was out of options. The police told him it was a civil matter and refused to intervene.
Everybody is absolutely baffled. How the hell can a corporation get away with doing this? And why are the cops not helping?
He couldn't afford a long lawsuit, and his father's medical bills weren't stopping. To make matters worse, the company was getting away with it in broad daylight. He didn't know it yet, but the internet was already watching. Reckless Ben is a YouTuber known for deep dive investigations into scams, cults, and shady organizations. When Brian's story landed on his desk, Ben knew he had to get involved. The sheer arrogance of it was too much to ignore. Ben assembled a team of creators to look into the situation. Their goal was simple: get Brian his money or get the Legos back. Initially, Ben wasn't the only creator looking into this. Another group of YouTubers had caught wind of the story and started investigating, but they dropped the case almost immediately. Ben called them to find out why.
But right after they started, they instantly stopped working on this case. So I called one of them to find out why.
So they were threatening legal action against us. You know, Bricks and Minifigs, which is a pretty big company who probably has way more resources than we can, really put up a fight against.
The company was using its corporate legal team to silence anyone who asked questions. These included cease and desist letters sent to intimidate smaller creators into backing off. Ben decided he wasn't going to back down. He and his team drove 16 hours to Salem, Oregon. Ben walked into the store wearing glasses with a hidden camera. He wanted to see how the employees would react to a simple question. He walked up to the counter. "Hey," he said politely. The employee's demeanor changed immediately. Before Ben could finish his sentence, she pointed at the door.
You can go ahead.
Really?
So you could go ahead and leave now, or I will call the police for harassment.
Ben hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't made a scene. He just mentioned Brian's name. She immediately picked up the phone and started loudly complaining that she was being harassed by a psychopath.
You want to watch the cameras? I'm being harassed by you. Watch the cameras. I am being harassed. You need to leave.
She claimed that he was threatening her. She then tried to give Ben the runaround, told him the store had nothing to do with it, and that he needed to contact corporate.
He's been supposed to be getting a hold of corporate.
But Ben had already contacted corporate. He had footage of that conversation too. When he spoke to them,
you have to talk to the store owner. Yeah, like they're all locally owned and operated, and we can't do anything with it here. Their decisions are their decisions.
This was a classic corporate shell game. Pass the blame back and forth until the victim gets exhausted and gives up. Ben eventually got Joshua Johnson, one of the new store owners, on the phone. Ben explained that he was there to pick up the Legos for his friend Brian. Josh was hostile from the start. He kept asking why Ben thought he was entitled to their inventory.
Are you the owner of the Bricks and Minifigs store?
Yeah, why? What you got?
So basically, I just wanted to get some of the Legos back that you guys still have. I think I'm looking for the clone turbo tank.
Why do you think you would be entitled to our inventory?
Ben replied that he had the contract. He pointed out that the Legos legally belonged to Brian.
Bro, why do you think your friend would be entitled to our inventory?
What's his? He owns the Legos.
Huh? He doesn't own the Legos.
Well, yeah, we have a contract. He does own them.
Josh didn't care about the contract.
No, bro, are you an idiot? Are you stupid?
And a few minutes later, the police arrived. When the police officer walked into the store, Ben tried to explain the situation. He told the officer,
basically, we have, I think it's like $200,000 worth of Lego sets that we just have them in the store, and we just like to pick them up, I guess, because they were going to sell it for us, but I guess they're not selling it for us anymore.
But the officer did not care. He listened to the store employee and immediately sided with the business. He turned to Ben and told him he was officially trespassed from the property.
I understand that. Right here, the factor is that they don't want you, they're a private owned store, and they don't want you on the site. Okay.
But I don't want them to keep the Lego sets, though.
Okay. You are trespass from here. So
okay.
Trespass for life. So if you come back...
Oh, for life?
Yeah. If you come back, you could be arrested.
If you watch a lot of police body cam footage, you'll notice this interaction is slightly unusual. In most trespass situations, officers will at least question the person as to why they are there. If someone explains that they are trying to recover stolen property, the cop will usually advise them on the proper channels, file a report, take it to civil court. But this cop did none of that. He instantly shut the conversation down. He had zero interest in hearing about the $200,000 worth of stolen goods sitting on the shelves right behind him. He was there to serve as a bouncer for bricks and minifigs. Meanwhile, Brian's father's medical bills kept accumulating. Every week the collection sat on those shelves was another week the family had nothing. With Ben officially trespassed from the store, he had to find another way to reach the people in charge. So he went straight to the top. He secured a meeting with Amon McNeff, the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs. McNeff is a man who looks exactly like a cartoon villain. When Ben sat down with him and asked about Brian's collection, Amon played dumb.
What's going on?
So you guys are holding some of our Legos?
No, we're not.
You're not?
No. So who's like?
Brian Mansell.
Okay, and who is that?
He's a guy who had he had like $200,000 worth of Legos in your guys' store.
Ben pulled out his phone and opened the Bricks and Minifigs social media pages. He showed him on the post where the store was actively promoting Brian's vintage Star Wars sets. He showed him posts where the store bragged about the value of the collection. The evidence was right there on the screen. Amon looked at the screen, then looked back at Ben. He didn't offer an explanation. He didn't apologize.
You can leave. If you come back here, we will call the cops. If you don't leave right now, I will call the cops.
The message was clear. Bricks and Minifigs was not going to negotiate. They were going to keep the toys, and they were going to use the police to arrest anyone who tried to stop them. Ben needed a different approach entirely. Now, at this point, reasoning with these people was useless. They were operating in bad faith. If he wanted to expose their corrupt practices to the world, he needed to get them into a courtroom. But as Brian had already discovered, a traditional lawsuit would cost tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Bricks and Minifigs would just stall the proceedings until Brian ran out of money. Ben needed Bricks and Minifigs to sue him. If they initiated the lawsuit, they would pay the filing fees and cover the upfront legal costs. Once they were in the discovery phase of the trial, Ben could force them to hand over their internal emails and inventory records regarding Brian's collection. So to provoke the company into suing him, Ben came up with a highly unconventional plan. He legally registered a new business entity. He named the company We Steal From Old People. He then created a website and started selling merchandise. The catch? He used the exact Bricks and Minifigs logo font and colors. He placed the words Bricks and Minifigs on the shirts, positioned as a tagline underneath the real company name. To anyone looking at the website, it looked like a Bricks and Minifigs page where the company was openly admitting to stealing from the elderly. Ben hoped the corporate lawyers would see this and immediately file a massive trademark infringement lawsuit. The corporate execs saw the website. They were furious, but they were also smart. They realized what Ben was trying to do. They knew that if they sued him for trademark infringement, Ben would use the trial to talk about Brian's stolen collection. The CEO decided to hold off. Best strategy was to ignore Ben and let the local franchise owners deal with the headache. The trademark trap failed, but the pressure was starting to get to Joshua Johnson. Josh called Ben and offered a deal.
We're happy to give you your stuff back. I just don't want any more damage to the store. Okay, this is what I need done. I need a written apology from Brian. I need all the negative comments taken off. I need positive reviews on there to make up for the damage. And then I'll give them back.
It was an attempt at extortion. The store had stolen a sick man's life savings, refused to pay him, threatened him with a legal ruin, and now they were demanding a public apology from the victim to save their own PR image. Brian flat out refused.
I walked in there with the best of intentions. Here's proof of my collection in the store. I want it back. And they've done nothing but lie and make my life a living fucking hell over this. I've gone through 9 months of anxiety, stress, hospital-ridden, medication-taking types of burden. No, I am not apologizing to this fucking asshole.
Brian was right on principle, but even from a tactical standpoint, the apology letter was a trap. If Brian wrote a letter admitting he was wrong, Bricks and Minifigs could use it in court to argue Brian had lied about theft. Ben decided to test Josh's sincerity and used deepfake AI software to animate his mouth. He recorded a fake audio clip of Brian apologizing and lip-synced it to the photo.
Hi, I'm Brian Mansell, and I apologize sincerely for accusing you guys of stealing my Legos. I was wrong, and you were right.
He sent the fake video to Josh. Josh loved it.
I want to give it back to him. That's the long and the short of it. We've run me over, I'm good.
But then, Josh moved the goalposts.
We gotta win Amanda over, right? Apologize to Amanda.
Okay.
Ben, playing along, went back to the store and apologized to the employee. As soon as he walked in,
there was a gentleman who was trespassed off the property maybe 4 or 5 days ago, and he's literally standing right in front of the store.
Ben called Josh to tell him what happened. Josh feigned ignorance.
I'm sorry Amanda did that. Thank you for doing that.
Weeks passed, and Josh kept stalling. Every time Ben called, there was a new excuse. But finally, Josh dropped the act entirely.
When we took over that store, there was nothing in that store. The shelves were empty.
They had sold the inventory, all of it was gone. They had pocketed the cash, and they had dragged Ben along for weeks just for their own amusement. Small claims court. The one option Bricks and Minifigs didn't see coming. Small claims court is designed for everyday people. The filing fees are low, you don't necessarily need an expensive lawyer, and judgments are usually handed down quickly. The only downside is that the maximum payout is capped, meaning Brian couldn't sue for the full $200,000 value of the collection. But getting something was better than getting nothing, and a legal victory would force the truth onto public record. Ben and Brian filed the paperwork. They submitted all the evidence: the original consignment contract, the inventory list from the previous owner, the social media posts showing the store selling the sets, and the recorded phone calls. They waited for a court date. They expected Bricks and Minifigs to show up with corporate lawyers to fight the claim. The day of the hearing came. Nobody from Bricks and Minifigs showed up. They completely ignored the summons. The judge reviewed the evidence and ruled in favor of Brian. Default judgment. They had officially won the case, and the court ordered the store owners to pay up. Brian called his fathers to tell him that they had won. The next morning, Bricks and Minifigs permanently closed the Salem, Oregon location. Literally one day after the default judgment was finalized, they locked the doors, packed up the remaining inventory, and shut down operations. By closing the specific legal entity Brian had sued, they effectively dissolved the business that owed him money. They shut down an entire retail store just to avoid paying a sick man for the toys they stole from him.
Literally one day after we filed motion for default judgment, they permanently closed down the store. At first, it did feel kind of cool that our plan worked so well, it completely shut them down. But pretty quickly it sunk in that we are not the winners here.
Bricks and Minifigs didn't even bother updating their Google listing to say the store was closed. Customers kept showing up to a locked door. To make sure the public knew the truth, Ben printed a massive sign and placed it in front of the abandoned building. The sign read, "This store is permanently closed because they stole a dying man's $200,000 Lego collection." People driving by took pictures. The images went viral on social media. Local news stations in Oregon picked up the story. The community was outraged. The pressure eventually forced Bricks and Minifigs Corporate to update their Google listing to permanently closed. But this fight was far from over. Because the store was closed, Ben had to file a new lawsuit. But this time, he was going to sue the franchise owners, Joshua Johnson and Brandon Best, personally. He was going to hold them accountable for the theft. But Josh and Brandon didn't live in Oregon. They lived in Utah. Ben and his team packed their bags and drove to Utah as well. They had no idea they were walking into something much more dangerous than a franchise dispute. Now, the legal system requires that before a lawsuit can proceed, the plaintiff must make a good faith effort to resolve the dispute outside of court. Ben had to attempt to talk to Josh and Brandon one last time. So, Ben bought a cheap plastic trophy, engraved it with Joshua Johnson saved the day, and drove to Josh's house in Utah. He planned to offer Josh the trophy if he just handed over the check for the Legos. But Josh knew Ben was in town. He had already called the local police. As Ben's car approached the neighborhood, they noticed two police cruisers idling on the street. Before they even reached Josh's home, lights flashed in the rearview mirror. An officer from American Fork Police Department pulled them over.
My name's Officer. This is American Fork Police. The reason I stopped you is the stop sign.
I didn't? I thought I stopped.
Yeah, you definitely stopped. So you said you ran a stop sign?
Huh?
You said you ran a stop sign?
I didn't see what happened.
Yeah, I was like,
because we definitely stopped at the stop sign.
Stopped.
Yeah.
Later, when reviewing the footage, the dash cam clearly showed the car coming to a complete full stop before the white line at the intersection before proceeding. They hadn't even done a rolling stop. The traffic stop was entirely fabricated. The officer couldn't have been more obvious about who tipped him off if he'd worn a Bricks and Minifigs t-shirt. The cop asked for their IDs. When Ben handed his over, the officer looked at it and smiled.
So who's Ben? Me? Ben? How's Utah? It's good. Like it?
He already knew exactly who Ben was before he looked at the ID. The police had been waiting for him. The cop informed Ben that he was not allowed to approach Josh's house and ordered them to leave the area immediately. Ben had been blocked from fulfilling his legal requirement to attempt a good faith conversation with Josh. So since Josh was off limits, Ben drove to the house of the other co-owner, Brandon Best. Brandon actually answered the front door, but his behavior was really bizarre. Brandon stood in the doorway, swaying slightly, staring blankly at Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Brandon just stared. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just swayed back and forth. I guess if you don't want to talk, I'll just talk, Ben continued. You guys told us to take you to court.
I guess if you want to talk, I'll just talk. So you guys told us to take you to court. We went to court and we won. We know you closed down the store to avoid paying us, so we could just sue you guys personally and do the whole thing again. We would obviously win again.
Before Ben could finish his sentence, a police cruiser rolled up to the curb. The American Fork Police were back. A female cop stepped out of the car. She walked towards Ben, immediately taking Brandon's side.
He didn't steal anything. He inherited the store from somebody
No,
else.
he stole $200,000 worth of... Because I've been spending the last 3 months in the case and I won in court.
He inherited the store. He's being blamed for everything that the previous owner did, and he's trying
Well,
to...
that's a lie. So we...
Okay, hold on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He's still trying to clean up the mess from the previous owner, and now he's catching blame for it. And he's just trying to clean up the mess from the previous owner.
No. She officially issued Ben a trespass warning.
Okay. If you come back and step foot on this property, you're gonna go to jail.
Ben took a picture of the formal trespass notice and submitted it to the court. The judge accepted it as proof that Ben had attempted a good faith conversation, but Brandon had refused. The lawsuit against Brandon was cleared to proceed, but Ben still needed to clear the same hurdle with Josh, and Josh's relationship with the American Fork Police Department was about to get a lot worse. So Ben and his team did some digging into the background of the franchise owners. They discovered that both Josh Johnson and Brandon Best were active, prominent members of the local community, with deep ties to the town, it appeared, to the people within it. The cops were going to crazy lengths to protect a fellow community member from outside scrutiny. They weren't acting like impartial enforcers of the law. They were acting like Josh's private security detail. As Ben and his team drove back toward their Airbnb that afternoon, lights flashed behind them again. Another traffic stop. Officer Hawken of the American Fork Police Department approached the window.
How's it going?
How's it going? I'm Officer Hawkins, American Fork Police Department. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Well, what's your name? Are you Ben?
The cop ordered them out of the car. He informed them that the police department had received an anonymous tip that the men inside the vehicle were transporting heroin. These guys were YouTubers investigating stolen Legos in Utah.
This officer is going to conduct a search of the person because there are substances in the vehicle. Really? So he's going to do that. I'm going to put this away, and then we'll be right. Don't reach in your pocket.
Ben consented to the search. He knew they had nothing to hide. For the next 2 hours, the cops tore their rental car apart. They checked every bag, every compartment, every pocket. They found absolutely nothing. But the cops weren't willing to let it go. Another cop, Officer Frayton, stepped up to one of Ben's teammates and shined a bright flashlight directly into the young man's eyes.
Your eyes, for example, right? There's a constriction, which is dilated, and then
Do you
not.
notice it?
So I haven't been looking at this. I'll show him. Go ahead, look at him.
Oh, look at you?
Yep.
You do see it?
So
it's crazy. I have no idea because I've never done any drugs in my life. I don't do drugs. I don't do alcohol. I've never done any of that in my life. I'm willing to do any drug tests.
Yeah.
Like I'm very cooperative. I don't understand what you're seeing in my eyes.
I'm gonna have a discussion with this officer.
The cop hesitated. He clearly wasn't expecting such a confident, cooperative response. He told the man to wait while he conferred with his partner. What the cops didn't know was that Ben's camera was recording their private conversation. The police department would later illegally redact this audio from their official release, but Ben managed to recover it. In the recovered audio, the cops quietly admit to each other that the men are clearly not on drugs and that they have no legal justification to hold them. Despite knowing this, they decided to try one last intimidation tactic. The cop returned to Ben's teammate.
I'm not sure if you're lying to me or not, to be honest.
I'm willing to take any drug test you want.
Walking a very dangerous line, which will get you into a lot of things.
Yeah.
You could end up in jail in Utah when you're from Cali.
Okay.
Not worth it, right?
Yeah.
We play differently here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm willing to cooperate with you guys and do anything you want me to because I'm not hiding anything. I can promise you that.
Realizing they couldn't force a false confession, the cops finally let them go. It later came to light that this was a standard tactic used by Joshua Johnson. According to Crystal Gorman, the ex-owner of the local location, Josh had spread rumors about her selling heroin when she refused to quietly hand over the Salem business. Josh was weaponizing the police by calling in false drug tips against his enemies, and making a false police report is obviously a crime. But the American Fork Police Department never investigated Josh for it. They were too busy harassing the people that he pointed his finger at. At this point, Brian's family had been waiting nearly a year for payment. A year of watching the collection, the thing his father had spent a lifetime building, disappear into someone else's profit margin, while the people responsible faced no consequence. Ben wasn't finished, but getting to Josh was going to require a very particular kind of creativity. Despite the constant police harassment, Ben eventually managed to get the court's approval to serve the official lawsuit papers to Josh. Since Ben was personally trespassed from Josh's property, he hired a professional third-party process server to deliver the documents. The server walked up to Josh's house and knocked on the door. Josh refused to answer. To force Josh to come outside, Ben came up with a plan. He printed a large poster that read, "I stole a dying man's life savings." Ben stood on the public sidewalk directly across the street from Josh's house and held the sign. It was completely legal. The sidewalk is public property, and holding a sign is protected under the First Amendment. Josh didn't come outside. Instead, he called his personal guard dogs. 3 police cruisers arrived within minutes. The cops marched up to Ben, fully intending to arrest him.
What are you guys doing here?
So we are in a court case with them and we have to serve them legal papers.
The cops looked at the sign, they looked at the public sidewalk, they huddled together, and after 20 minutes of furious conversation, one cop sighed in defeat.
I think this phone call was the breaking point for the police.
Oh, he's rubbing his chin.
The police couldn't handle the fact that I was right and they were wrong.
But another cop, Lieutenant Adamson, wasn't willing to accept reality. He marched over to the fence and ripped the sign away. The cops regrouped near their cruisers. Ben's recovered audio caught them scheming again. They acknowledged that Ben wasn't breaking the law, but they decided that they needed to arrest him anyway to protect Josh. They approached the group again. This time, they targeted Sheldon, one of Ben's cameramen. Out of pure reflex, Sheldon tapped the side power button to lock the screen before handing it to the officer. Lieutenant Adamson exploded.
And Lieutenant Adamson can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to seize your phone right now.
Do not do that. You understand me? Right now you're attempting to destroy evidence. Okay? Put your hands behind your back.
I was just locking my phone.
Sheldon was slammed against the cruiser and placed in handcuffs. Tapping the power button on an iPhone does not delete files. Furthermore, the police did not have a search warrant for the phone, meaning they had no legal right to access its contents anyway. Locking the screen is a basic privacy measure, but the cops clearly didn't care about logic. They just needed an excuse to make an arrest, and they used a button press to justify an obstruction of justice charge. Sheldon was hauled off to the station. Ben was also detained on a bogus stalking charge for standing on a public sidewalk. They spent hours in jail before eventually being released on bail. The judge who reviewed the arrest report threw the charges out immediately, recognizing the absurdity of the situation. But the American Fork Police Department wasn't finished. After being released from jail, Ben and his team retreated to their rented Airbnb to regroup and rest. They were exhausted, terrified, and starting to understand that the local authorities weren't just hassling them. They were actively trying to ruin their lives. And just a few hours later, a resident in the neighborhood who knew about the situation called the police. They reported that the YouTubers were staying in the local Airbnb. The American Fork Police Department didn't just send a patrol car to check it out. They organized a full-scale raid. To justify the raid, the cops drafted a search warrant, claiming that they were looking for stolen Legos. The anonymous caller had allegedly overheard the YouTubers talking about stolen toys. Now, this was a blatant lie. Ben didn't have the Legos. That was the entire point of the lawsuit. Josh had the Legos, but the judge, Roger W. Griffin, signed the warrant anyway without requesting any supporting evidence. The cops surrounded the Airbnb. They approached the door with their hands on their weapons. When Ben opened the door, a cop grabbed him by the shirt and yanked him onto the front porch.
No. Don't move like that. You understand me? Don't move like that. Okay?
Yeah, this cop pulled my arm so far back, it dislocated my shoulder. He claims it's because I was attempting to make an escape or something.
Don't move like that. You understand me? Don't move like that. Don't move quick. Everybody just chill.
Ben wasn't resisting. He wasn't moving. The body cam footage clearly shows Ben standing perfectly still with his hands visible. The cop wrenched Ben's arm upward with such force that it dislocated his shoulder. Ben cried out in pain as he was slammed face first against the exterior wall and handcuffed. The cop later wrote in his official report that Ben had tensed his arm and appeared to be preparing to flee, a classic use of force justification lie, directly contradicted by the video evidence. The cops stormed the house. They searched every room, turning over mattresses and emptying closets, looking for non-existent stolen Legos. Ben was taken to an interrogation room. His shoulder was throbbing. He was terrified. Ben believed that because he had done nothing wrong, the truth would set him free. He thought that if he sat down and explained the entire situation to the detective, they would realize it was all a misunderstanding. This was a naive mistake. In the American justice system, cops are not your friends during an interrogation. They're actively looking for any statement that can be twisted into a criminal charge. This is why defense attorneys universally advise suspects to invoke their right to remain silent. Ben sat in the chair and poured his heart out. He explained the consignment deal. He explained the hostile takeover. He explained how he had tried to serve the papers legally. Then he mentioned the GoFundMe.
For us. So let's do a GoFundMe.
Right after I mentioned this GoFundMe, the investigator wanted to leave the room.
Hang tight here and then I'll be back with you, okay?
Okay.
Something about me mentioning this GoFundMe really caught his attention.
Alright, good. Well, I'd just like to know more about this GoFundMe. Like I said, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, we were just trying to get, so basically what ended up happening is Ben got arrested, which we were pretty blown away he got arrested, but I'm like, all right, I'll take over now. Like, I don't want you to get in any more trouble. And he's like, yeah, I can't get in any more trouble. Like if you take over, then do a GoFundMe to get him his money back, and I'm the one, getting put in cuffs.
The detective's eyes lit up. He finally had his angle. The cop left the room, and when he returned, his demeanor had changed. The police twisted the narrative. They claimed that by setting up a GoFundMe and publicizing Josh's actions, Ben was engaging in targeted defamation and cyberstalking designed to extort the store owner. Raising money for a victim of corporate theft is not a crime, but the cops didn't need a conviction. They just needed an excuse to lock Ben up and take him off the board. The cops revoked Ben's bail. They requested that he be held in county jail for for 30 days until his court date, effectively ending his investigation. Ben spent the night in a cell. The next morning, a different judge reviewed the booking report. He looked at the charges, looked at the context, and realized that the police department was completely out of line. The judge immediately reinstated Ben's bail and ordered him to be released. Ben walked out of jail nursing his dislocated shoulder. He realized he couldn't stay in Utah. The cops were fabricating evidence, using excessive force, and actively protecting a criminal enterprise. Ben booked a flight and fled to Mexico. It was the only place he felt safe. As Ben released his videos detailing the corruption, the public backlash against the American Fork Police Department was merciless. Thousands of people flooded the department's social media pages, demanding an investigation into the cops involved. The pressure became so intense that the chief of police, Cameron Paul, was forced to release an official video statement addressing the scandal. The video was a masterclass in gaslighting. Chief Paul sat in front of the camera, speaking in almost a whispered tone, and proceeding to list a series of outright lies. First, he addressed the initial traffic stop. He claimed the cop initiated the stop because a vehicle failed to stop before the stop line at a stop sign. This was directly contradicted by the officer's own dashcam footage, which Ben had obtained and published. The video clearly showed the car coming to a complete stop behind the white line. Second, Chief Paul addressed the attempt to serve the legal papers. He claimed Josh had declined to accept them because the court confirmed the papers had already been served, but the process server was literally standing on the lawn trying to deliver the initial papers. If they had already been served, the court wouldn't have authorized the secondary attempt. Chief Paul was taking Josh's word as gospel. Third, the chief addressed the seizure of the cell phone. He stated that the cop forcibly removed the phone because the suspect began manipulating it, which led the cops to believe he was attempting to destroy evidence. He ignored the fact that locking an iPhone screen does not destroy evidence. And finally, Chief Paul addressed the dislocated shoulder. He claimed Ben had tensed his arm, necessitating the use of force. And then further, to discredit Ben, the chief pointed out that in Ben's YouTube video, he displayed an x-ray of a left shoulder, while the officer had grabbed his right arm. But Ben had openly stated in the video that he used a stock image for visual effect, because he didn't have access to a medical facility while sitting in a jail cell. The chief ignored the body cam footage showing the officer wrenching Ben's arm upward without provocation. The chief concluded by stating,
"And nothing in the actions taken by the American Fork Police Department should be interpreted as validating, supporting, or defending anyone involved in that separate civil or criminal dispute."
The public didn't buy a single word of it, but Bricks and Minifigs had already moved on to a different attack. If they couldn't cut off Ben's freedom, they would cut off his income. Ben, like many investigative YouTubers, relies heavily on Patreon to fund his work. His supporters pledged monthly donations to cover travel expenses, legal fees, and production costs. Without that income, his channel would collapse. Bricks and Minifigs hired a corporate law firm. They drafted a massive legal complaint, complete with a motion for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. They sent this stack of legal threats directly to the headquarters of Patreon. The demand was simple: terminate Reckless Ben's account immediately or face severe legal consequences. This is a tactic known as a slap suit. Large corporations use these legal threats to intimidate web hosts, social media platforms, and publishing companies into silencing their critics. Most tech companies, wanting to avoid expensive litigation, will comply and ban the creator. But Patreon did something practically unheard of. Jack Conte, the CEO and co-founder of Patreon, recorded a video addressing the situation.
Dear creator community, my name is Jack Conte, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Patreon. On May 29th, Patreon received an official takedown request filed by Bricks and Minifigs for media and accounts related to Reckless Ben and an ongoing dispute regarding a local Lego consignment issue. We're keeping Ben's page up. And if Bricks and Minifigs doesn't like that, they can sue us.
It was a rare moment to see a billion-dollar company putting its own neck on the line to protect a single creator from corporate bullying. Patreon recognized that Ben wasn't breaking their terms of service. He was simply conducting journalism. But Bricks and Minifigs had one final card to play. If they couldn't cut off his funding, they would use a court system to tape his mouth shut. Bricks and Minifigs' lawyers approached a judge in a closed-door session. This is known as an ex parte hearing, meaning only one side is present to make their case. The defendant, Ben, is not notified and is not given a chance to defend himself. In this secret hearing, they told the judge that Reckless Ben was a dangerous, violent extremist. They claimed that he had called in bomb threats to their stores. They alleged that he had actively planned to murder their store managers and employees. They presented zero hard evidence to support these claims, because the claims were entirely fabricated. Ben had never threatened physical violence against anyone. The body cam footage, the phone recordings, and his YouTube videos proved that he was simply asking for the return of stolen property. But because Ben wasn't in the courtroom to present his evidence, the judge only heard the fiction spun by the lawyers. The judge granted an immediate sweeping gag order against Ben. Ben was legally forbidden from mentioning the name Bricks and Minifigs ever again. He was banned from releasing episode 3 of his investigation, and if Ben violated the order, even by uttering the company's name on a live stream, he would be held in contempt of court and immediately arrested. But the most insidious part of that order involved the GoFundMe. The lawyers structured this injunction so that if Ben violated the gag order, he would immediately forfeit his ongoing $300,000 lawsuit against the company. Furthermore, the hundreds of thousands of dollars raised by the public on GoFundMe for Brian's sick father would be seized and handed directly over to Bricks and Minifigs as damages. They had taken Brian's family hostage. Ben released a short, defeated video.
Episode 3 is finally finished after crazy all-nighters and basically destroying my health. But I can't post it or I will go to jail. And not only that, I will also immediately lose my lawsuit of $300,000, and the GoFundMe we made for Brian will go straight to this mystery company that I am no longer allowed to talk about.
Ben had to comply. He couldn't risk the GoFundMe money. He couldn't risk his freedom. The corporate legal machine had successfully silenced him without ever having to prove he was wrong. Bricks and Minifigs thought that if they silenced the journalist, the story would disappear. But they made one fundamental mistake. They failed to understand how the internet works. The Streisand effect hit them like a freight train. By silencing Ben, they confirmed to the entire world that they were guilty. They turned a niche hobby drama into a mainstream scandal about corporate censorship and police corruption. Other massive YouTubers like CoffeeZilla picked up the story, and the outrage multiplied exponentially. But internet outrage is a dangerous, uncontrollable force, and soon, it started hurting innocent people. Bricks and Minifigs is a franchise. While the corporate executives like Amon McNeff and the specific Salem owners like Josh and Brandon were deeply involved in the scandal, the vast majority of Bricks and Minifigs locations across the country had absolutely nothing to do with it. They were owned by regular people, moms, dads, local Lego enthusiasts who had simply bought into the brand name years ago. But the internet mob did not care about the nuance of franchise law. People began showing up at random Bricks and Minifigs locations hundreds of miles away from Oregon and Utah. CoffeeZilla highlighted several of these videos in his coverage. In one, a man in a sleeveless shirt marches into a random store and points a finger at a teenager cashier who has never met Josh Johnson or Brian Mansell.
Not in my store. Look it up. Not in my store. You cannot walk. Then call security. We're calling security. Call. Sir, if you are harassing our customers, they steal from people. Look at Reckless Ben's video.
They weren't helping Brian get his father's collection back. They were using the scandal as an excuse to act like thugs in public, and their actions gave Bricks and Minifigs Corporate the exact ammunition they needed. The corporate lawyers could point to these videos and say, look, Reckless Ben's videos are inciting violence against innocent employees. Brian had spent the last year fighting to get his father's life work back. These people were making that harder. But then Bricks and Minifigs Corporate made a move that was about to blow this whole thing wide open. Facing a PR disaster with no ceiling, Bricks and Minifigs Corporate released an official statement announcing that they had mutually parted ways with Brandon Best and Joshua Johnson, effectively firing the two men who had caused the Utah police mess. But they didn't stop there. The corporate statement pointed the finger squarely at the original owners of the Salem store, the Gormans. Our current investigation points to the previous owners, the statement read. There's significant evidence of gross negligence and operational gaps during the transition. Corporate claimed that Crystal Gorman had illegally accepted the consignment deal against company policy, and that the entire missing inventory issue was her fault. Amon McNeff went on a live to push this narrative. We explicitly forbid consignment, Amon claimed, shaking his head sadly. We had a franchise go rogue and enter into an agreement without our knowledge or authorization. But Crystal Gorman wasn't going to let a corrupt corporation drag her name through the mud. Crystal released her own video, bringing receipts that destroyed Amon's narrative. First, she released the official franchise agreement contract that corporate had made her sign when she opened the store. In black and white ink, on the very first page, the contract explicitly stated, franchisee may also offer consignment services. Amon had lied. Consignment was completely legal under their own corporate rules. Second, Crystal released an audio recording of a phone call she had with Kai McAllister, the executive product manager at corporate, on the night they forcibly took over her store. In the recording, Crystal tells Kai that if they don't handle the inventory properly, she will have no choice but to take legal action. Kai responds, if we go the legal route, it's going to be a very expensive battle for you. It's not going to be a good position for you guys to get into. If you fight this, you're putting yourself into a whole lot of shit. It sounds like a threat, Crystal replies on the tape. Yes, Kai admits. Yes, it is. That's it. That's the whole story right there on a recording. Bricks and Minifigs Corporate wasn't an innocent bystander dealing with a rogue franchisee. They were participants in an effort to bully the owners, steal the inventory, and use their financial resources to crush anyone who tried to stop them. They knew about Brian's collection from day one. They knew what they were taking when they forced Crystal out of that store, and when they got caught, they pointed the finger at everyone except themselves. Brian Mansell went into a Lego store to help his sick father. He came out with 9 months of anxiety, legal threats, and nothing to show for it. An elderly man spent his entire life carefully building a collection that brought him joy. A son tried to sell it to help his father live out his final years in comfort. Instead, they were robbed. They were lied to. They were dragged through a nightmare while the company responsible used every tool available. corporate lawyers, police departments, gag orders, and ex parte hearings to make sure that nothing ever touched them. While Reckless Ben's GoFundMe managed to raise life-changing money to help the family, the principle remains deeply upsetting. The collection is still gone. The company that took it has never apologized. The police officers who abused their power have not been held accountable. Bricks and Minifigs has suffered catastrophic reputational damage. Major partnerships have been severed. Trust in the brand is at an all-time low. It's difficult to imagine a collector ever feeling safe, handing over their valuable items to a Bricks and Minifigs franchise again. In the modern corporate world, justice isn't a guarantee. It's a luxury, and sometimes the people building the biggest empires are the most willing to tear someone else's life apart to protect them.